about consciousness, when you tap into that intelligence, which is when people who are connected to nature, that's what we do. And you start to see this incredibly sublime, vast body of knowledge, wisdom, information that's coming out of the non-human world. It becomes like embedded in all of us that we need to look after this, and we need to protect this, because this is it. I mean, this is our source of life.
I just was out at an intentional community in Oregon studying permaculture.
Can you tell me why you took it and what the vibe was like and the people and stuff?
Yeah, I decided to go because I had just finished a period of, I'd say, a pretty substantial transition in my life. I think what I really needed to do when all that was over was just really connect myself to the ground. And when I got there and just, one of the first days into it, I was like shoveling goat shit. And it felt so good. It was like, this is exactly what I want to be doing right now.
The system of permaculture it's like a design science. It's rooted in observation of natural systems.
It's about think first, observe, taking what you see, read the signs of nature, and then do. Because a lot of the agribusiness is like do, and they don't think about what's happening.
There's a set of principles and techniques and strategies, all very practical.
What are the basic principles?
Well, things like, supporting biological diversity would be one. There's also things like how many functions can you get out of everything you do? And if you have a pond that, cleans water, you might be doing aquaculture. A greenhouse you might attach to your house, and it heats and cools your house. It grows food. It might also process gray water. It might harvest roof water. It's a functional design.
But I have to say, just thinking this out loud, and like if I travel around, I think of these huge populations, millions and billions of people. I mean, most of the people on the planet are now probably being fed through the monoculture agriculture system. When I come to visit a permaculture settlement, it's like much smaller, much more intensive, much more particular. But it doesn't seem intuitively to me that, what's going on in these settings could feed those masses of people.
The issue that you're talking about is all these vast amounts of, you see all these huge, corn and wheat and soybeans. Those communities are not eating that food. When you have a diverse farm like what we have, our yields are much higher. My hope is that in local relationship to people in place, that deepens more than it is now. It's not about having to be in a wilderness area. Cuba, the majority of the food was grown in the cities for the whole island for years.
A lot of food can be produced in small space. The water can be taken care of very, very nicely. So there are good examples. There are all the technologies. There are people willing to work for it. It's just a matter of start doing it and reaching that changing point, the peak of the consciousness.
So John, tell me, what is the system that you've devised that treats water in an ecologically sustainable way?
Well, I call them eco-machines, and they've been used to grow foods, They've been used to treat waste. They've been used to detoxify toxic compounds.
So I'm standing above a 12,000-gallon septic tank. We pull off the middle layer, which is gray water, sort of a greasy, oily substance, and bring it into the machine to treat it.
You've got a whole series of tanks in a row. You then seed into them the intelligence of nature. For example, I would go to maybe a half a dozen different wild environments and bring the life from all of those places and put them in the tanks. Because I knew that nature had a way of dealing with almost every chemical and molecule. So when you assemble 7 kingdoms of life, you then created a eco-machine that is actually intelligent. It's got behind it hundreds of millions of years of practice.
So water that has been, as early as 3 days ago, toxic to humans and plants and most other animals becomes fishable, swimmable by New York State standards.
What I've dedicated my life to is to try and understand nature's operating principles and put them to work where possible toward human needs.
We all know the Earth is in trouble. I often wondered if there was a united organization of organisms, otherwise known as uh-oh, and every organism had a right to vote. Will we be voted on the planet or off the planet? I think that vote is occurring right now. I want to present to you a suite of 6 mycological solutions using fungi, and these solutions are based on mycelium.
You've been speaking recently and sort of discussing how mushrooms could help save the world situation. You know, how could us making a more conscious symbiotic relationship with fungus kind of help us leach out toxins and so on?
Well, what few people realize is that fungi and the networks that they produce, which is called mycelium, is the fine fiber material that is virtually on all land masses of Earth. And what people have been, and scientists in particular, have been slow to recognize is how critical these fungal networks are to ecological stability. So many habitats are threatened and they struggle to respond. And what these fungi do very quickly is remove the toxic barriers that allow then these communities to thrive a lot more readily than otherwise would occur.
These are pictures of oyster mushrooms, which can be used to break down oil that's collected on mats like these, which are made of human hair.
Whether that pollution is E. coli based, whether it is toxic chemicals from industrial sources, a wide variety of pollutants can be captured by the mycelium that can then detoxify it. In the course of that, lead to habitat restoration.
So you think that somehow these mycelial mats are almost like brains, or they're kind of how what do they think about?
I think the mycelium is a neurological network of the planet. It's in constant biomolecular communication with this ecosystem. So if you take the mycelial mat in Eastern Oregon, 2,200 acres in size. What is so cool about these mycelial networks is that if they encounter a pathogen, for instance, at one side of the network, and they can articulate a response in producing a novel antibiotic, that information transfers throughout the entire network. And so the organization of mycelium, of the computer internet, of neurons, they all conform to the same archetype that is governed by string theory. I believe that this is not accidental. The mycelium has developed it, our brains have also developed it, and that our invention of the computer internet is an inevitable consequence of us repeating a previously successful paradigm.